Hello everyone and welcome to the Commexis cast, all the news you need to know from our inbox to yours. Today we're talking about Google finally releasing a podcast app. Hello everyone, I'm Matthew McGrody, the videographer and podcaster here at Commexis, and today I am joined by the lead strategist at Commexis, Philip Brooks.
Good afternoon.
So Google has finally done it. They decided that they really wanted to tussle against Apple's podcast app, and they have released their own podcast app simply called Google Podcasts, or I think it's actually just called Podcasts, because
that's some fine branding. I don't know how many people sat in a room to come up with that.
So it is currently on Android phones and only Android only Android devices. It is not on iOS yet. As I'll mention a little bit later, they're potentially going to release it on iOS, but when you think about it, Apple already has their native built-in app. There's probably not a super great reason to release it yet, but we'll get into some details of why it might be interesting for some people. So this was actually just released today. It will include over 2 million podcasts on it and will sync across virtually everything Google, including Google Assistant, Google Home Speakers, and Search. But it's also going to be featuring a lot more AI use. That's sort of Google's thing in a lot of different ways. So a lot of this information, just so you guys know, is coming from John Fingus on Engadget and also Pranav Dixit on BuzzFeed News. BuzzFeed News actually had a really great piece talking about some of the diversity things that Google's going to be doing for podcasting, which I will get to in a couple minutes. So Google's going to be introducing a lot of AI-driven features in the months ahead for its podcasting. So not only will it read along with the podcast and give you transcriptions as you're going, it'll actually automatically transcribe so you can kind of actually read ahead of what you're listening to if you want to. Depending on what you're listening to, that might quote unquote spoil some things. I know some comedy podcasts, it's not always funnier to read things in comparison to listening.
That would be weird for timing.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of thing, I don't know. But I mean, I could definitely see that for news or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially for any narrative podcasts, obviously you would be spoiling yourself if you're reading ahead, but it does help to have those transcriptions either for people who are hard of hearing or something like that. Just to have something else to reference, I think is very nice. The app is also going to suggest additional related materials while you're going through it for either your reading, watching, or listening. So I'm assuming if you're, for example, listening to a news podcast or something like that, they might have either related stories or related information that are planned to be shown. So all of this obviously is not currently in the app. It's just AI things that Google wants to do.
I got to say, I'm a big fan of the whole, printed out portion of the narrative thing because, I enjoyed it when it was its first volume when they called it books. So I really think that's going to be great. It's going to be a big hit when it goes forward.
I'm so sad that I didn't get that because that was. Thanks, Phil. That was really good. That was really good. So here's a quote from Zack Reneau-Wedeen, who's the product manager for Google Podcasts. Quote: "Releasing Google Podcast is really about making audio a first-class citizen within Google, in line with our mission to organize the world's information. In the last few years, we've seen a huge explosion in the creativity, variety, and the quality of podcasts available." And this quote is from an interview with BuzzFeed News. So obviously they're definitely looking forward to doing a lot more seemingly audio and podcast things. What actually surprises me the most, not that they're releasing an app, it's mostly that they didn't have one to begin with.
Right.
So for those of you who don't know, you were able to listen to podcasts on Google Play Music, but it wasn't the dedicated podcast app that Apple has had for a really long time, and that I personally think is really useful. Obviously, Apple uses some algorithms to suggest you like top podcasts, which means that some of the smaller ones can sort of get hidden away if people aren't actively searching for that. Doesn't seem like Google's necessarily going to be doing that just yet, though I would not be shocked if they based some things off your browsing history and
I like
listening
Stitcher
history.
as well. Stitcher's a good one. I use that for on my iOS device because I listen to a lot of podcasts, so it's been a big thing for me. Of course, this one as well.
Yeah, of course. Speaking of Stitcher, you can find us on Stitcher. Wink. So you can also find us on Google Play Music. We actually just submitted just the other day, so hopefully it will be up, and if not, you can check out the links in the blog because it will definitely have them there as well. So Google obviously has not said anything about the iOS version of this app, which makes sense. They probably just want it to be an Android-only thing. That said, it does sound like a lot of these features sound really cool, I think, and I'm sad that they might not be on the regular podcast iOS store, because I mean, I use Apple phones. I like the podcast app, but transcriptions sound cool. Related imagery, related listening sound cool. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. What are you thinking, Phil?
Yeah, I do agree that there's definitely a place for them. A lot of times if you're listening to kind of a free-form, fast-flowing podcast, it would be very helpful to have that transcript to go back to if you're not sure of what a statement was, or perhaps they're referring to a person by name, or a link. A link's a big one. They're talking about a website or something like that, and you're not entirely certain what they mentioned. Or anytime it's a homophone or a homonym, and you don't know exactly how it was spelled, that would be very helpful as well. I think that one of the things you mentioned is it was surprising that they didn't have one to this point. But I guess if you think about it, there wasn't anything new to provide that they weren't already offering through the Google Play kind of, I guess, platform. So now that they're actually able to expand upon what they're working with and give you more features, now it makes sense for them to come up with their own thing. Something also that they can monetize and put their own ads in, which is, as we know, is Google's
That is a
forte.
very good point. I'm also interested in seeing if they start baking it into future Android, specifically Android phone devices, just because one of the big sellers of Apple's podcast app is that it automatically comes with your phone. I personally use it because I'm too lazy to go find another one, and I haven't really needed to find any other ones. But I think it'll be very interesting to see how Google decides.
I would very much like to see if they're going to put their tremendous resources behind sponsoring some exclusive content that would go through that.
That's a good point.
Because one of the reasons I like Stitcher is because they do have some some exclusive content on there that you can find. They have oddly enough, if you're a nerd, they have a Wolverine podcast based on so a Marvel tie-in, which is pretty good.
That's cool.
It's pretty well acted as well. And there's a lot of these kinds of things out there where people are partnering, and I think that with so many great narrative podcasts out there, to have the kind of budget that they could throw behind something to a content creator, they could really create some great stuff with those resources. So I think it would be nice to see them do some exclusive content as well.
Absolutely, and one thing that they're definitely branching into with some of their additional resources, they're doing more than just being an additional podcast distribution network and stuff like that. They're also going to be starting a program that will help grow, quote, diversity and perspectives in podcasts with an independent advisory board as its guide. So you may see more shows from underrepresented groups as well as fresh ideas that improve the podcasting business. We have another quote from Reneau-Wedeen. When we talk about doubling the size of the podcast listening population worldwide, the growth needs to come from around the world, where most of the opportunity is going to be. It can't only come from America. So previously in that article, something that I do not have quoted for me right now, they talked about how a lot of podcasting is American and typically white male American, so they're hoping to sort of broaden that. One of the countries they actually mentioned is that in India, podcasting is super popular, but you don't see a lot of podcasts coming from India because of either lack of resources or something like that. So down the road, Google says it's open to helping podcast creators around the world find sustainable business models to support their shows. Quote, right now we're focused on helping podcasters grow their audience, said Reneau-Wedeen, but as we look towards the future, we want to be sensitive to all business models that can succeed in podcasting. Yeah, I think that is actually in particular very interesting, because right now a lot of the ways that podcasting gets funded or gets funding, if they get funding at all, a lot of podcasts are done just, because they're doing them because they're doing them for fun or something like that. But obviously things like Planet Money and stuff like that, and the NPR podcasts, they are getting funded through NPR and stuff like that. But a lot of podcasts that are not being funded that way either have to be a part of collectives that help them make money, or they have to either have like Patreons or something like that. So I'm interested in seeing how they decide to go with that, because when we talk about the advertising model, I'm interested in seeing if that is something that they
I could easily see, that's a great point, and one that I hadn't considered in my earlier statement, which really, it makes perfect sense, because Google could then pair these podcasts up with people within the ad display network and push them together with people that have similar interests and things like that. So I think that that's a great way to leverage their already existing business model and just throw it out on a whole new platform.
Especially if they decide, and this is speculation on my part, if they decide to work into exclusive content, they can then also input through the different ad breaks stuff that advertisements that probably play through their Google Play Music Network, right? So just a whole nother extension of a way for them to make money. But we'll have to see how that ends up going. So that's all for today's episode of the Commexis Cast Daily. Thank you for tuning in with us. Philip, thank you for joining me on, I was about to say on the couch, at the table today for our podcast.
If we get a couch, let me know.
I will. Yeah, do not worry. I will let you know. So again, you guys can check us out on TuneIn, Stitcher, the Apple Podcast Store, and SoundCloud, and pretty soon the Google Play Music Store and the Google Podcasts app. We are working on that, so I will let you know when that is a thing. You guys can also watch us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You are probably watching us there right now, or you're listening to us on the other platforms, in which case also thank you.
I recommend listening. Just this is not a
I mean, I think my beautiful
video.
face actually is perfect for video, so sorry, Phil. I can't agree with you on that one. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and check us out next time for more. Thank you.